Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny back along with Kenny Squared, and this is Sports on a Positive Tip. We have conversations here at the intersection of sports and faith. Kenny, I don't know if you saw any of it last night, but Klay Thompson made his return to San Francisco. The Warriors got a tremendous ovation, tremendous tribute. Curry kind of emceed it, and then Curry went out and killed them and won. They won by three, I believe the Warriors did. They're 9-2. We'll get to them in just a bit. Do you think Klay Thompson and Steph Curry is the best backcourt duo in your time?
Yeah, probably. I
Okay.
mean, because you can't really, no, Michael Jordan wouldn't be considered like Jordan and Pippen, probably not, because
No,
he's
because
kind of
Pippen
a
was more of a forward.
yeah.
Jordan was the off guard.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Especially they won four rings. Like,
Hard to beat that, right? I I jotted down two in my lifetime back in the day. It's hard to compare the eras, but Walt Frazier, Clyde, and Earl Monroe. I mean, they were phenomenal. Won a championship together, and then Jerry West and Gail Goodrich, I thought were just great back in the day. I'm sure there's others that we could think of, but you got to put Clay and Curry right up there, especially with all the winning that they did.
yeah,
Um, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, what do you make of this? They've, in the last few days, they traded for Jorge Soler. They signed Kyle Hendricks, and they also yesterday signed one Travis d'Arnaud. I think d'Arnaud's a very good player, um, but he's still kind of a backup catcher slash DH. What are the Angels trying to do here?
they're trying to do what the Royals did last year, 106 losses to playoffs.
Yeah,
Um, you have a healthy Mike Trout. You've got a great manager. I don't know. And also the West is awful. Like
yeah,
everyone in the West was bad. No one won us or was nominated for any of the single awards
yeah,
for Major League Baseball. So
yeah.
they got
Wow.
shot.
Nobody from the West, huh? Okay. Um, yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's wide open. Why not take advantage while you have this really good manager? I still think that very quietly they may look to trade Mike Trout, but that's just still me. I'm still holding on. I'm not holding on to that. I'd rather he stay there, but I could see the Phillies, who are now saying that Alec Boehm is on the block. I could see them as the favorite to land somebody like Mike Trout, but we'll see. The Winnipeg Jets. Do you know who they are?
Um, yeah, well, they're a hockey team. They have as
NHL.
many.
I could not tell you one player on the Winnipeg Jets, but they have started off 15-1. So that will
Wow.
definitely be a team to be reckoned with. We're going to jump into the NBA though and talk about the 12-0 Cavs, a lot of other things, and then NFL. Lots to get to. You ready to get this going?
Let's get into it.
This episode of Sports on the Positive Tip is brought to you by the Tavern Coffee House. Attention, coffee lovers! Are you craving the perfect cup of coffee to start your day? Well, look no further than the Tavern Coffee House. It's located at 12302 Buckeye Road in Cleveland, Ohio. You can also check them out and order your coffee at thetaverncoffee.com. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny squared.
with the sports on the Positive Tip podcast. Kenny, I because we didn't get to the NBA last week, I figured let's start with the NBA and then we will spend a lot of time on the NFL. I really want to get to my New York Jets. I don't know if you want to talk much about your Giants. Um, and maybe we talk a little bit Dallas Cowboys, but I certainly want to talk about the Chiefs and the Detroit Lions and what you're watching. I want to give you plenty of time to go over your sheet. But let's start with the NBA. And last night was the beginning of the NBA Cup. I can't say I'm totally warming up to it yet. The court colors don't really bother me, or the ball is a little bit different. None of that bothers me, but I'm just not as excited. Like if it like the Lakers won it last year, right? I mean, what did it really mean at the end of the day? Now, if the Knicks win it or they go far, I might start to get a little pumped up. But the crowds seem to be in it last night. So, but I want to start with the 76ers and the Knicks because this is what I wanted to get your opinion on last week. Joel Embiid is the first game that he played. Now, he was hurt and then he got suspended because he pushed a reporter. I mean, I listened, the reporter probably shouldn't have brought up his brother, his son. I didn't read the article, but Embiid knows better. You know, you got to keep your cool in that situation. So he got suspended for 3 games after that. But he has said that he's not going to play in any back-to-backs. The Sixers have a back-to-back tonight. They looked all, I mean, I'm glad they looked a little off last night. Paul George looked fantastic. And as you and I have said thousands of times over the years on this show, that we think Paul George is a wonderful player if he could stay healthy. But Tyrese Maxey is hurt on that team. And without him and without a healthy Embiid, or an Embiid that's going to play at least 60 of these next 70 or so games, I don't know how that happens, because they have like about 8 back-to-backs, and he has said he's not going to play. So it'll be interesting to see if he plays tonight. But what's your whole take on the Sixers first? The Knicks won, which was a really good win there. We can get to them in just a bit, but what's your take on Joel Embiid and the Sixers?
Um, I feel like that could be a very I feel like that could start to look like a volcano ready to erupt in a
Mm,
bad way. Um, because like I mean, first of all, Joel Embiid has been like there's not very few MVPs in NBA history to never make, let alone an NBA finals, a conference finals.
right, right.
And I would guess, I would have to actually look. I would guess that he's the only guy that's never made a conference finals as an MVP. Maybe Derrick Rose, no, he made it. But either
Yeah,
way, um, like you're getting to the point where his legacy is kind of getting a little bit on the line here, where a lot of people are already questioning whether or not he's durable for a full season. Which when was the last time he played a full season? Has he ever? I'd have to actually look. But um, there, it could get very late, very early for them.
yeah,
Because like it's too early to talk about standings. And
right.
especially in the East, everyone is kind of struggling, not named the Cavs and the Celtics. So like if you're looking at like their actual standings, it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
But let's just say, for argument's sake, that Embiid does play the next 60 out of 70 games,
Yeah.
which he still wouldn't qualify. I don't think he's going to, because he still wouldn't qualify for MVP. He wouldn't qualify for All NBA, any of that jazz. So he has zero incentive to do so.
Yeah.
Um, but like even if he does play, you still question if he can get through another up to 28 games in the playoffs. Um,
Yeah.
Especially like the playoffs are a lot more physically demanding. And if you're facing, say, a team like the Knicks, where you've got to deal with Karl Anthony Towns, or you're facing the Bucks if they can get their act together and facing off against Giannis, um, or the Celtics and their excellent defense, or the Cavs with Jared Allen, who is tremendous as well. Um, like the path to make it all the way, there's a lot of big men in there.
Yeah.
Um, but also they need Joel Embiid to play because Tyrese Maxey is hurt. And Paul George isn't the guy. Once again, Paul George isn't going, he's not going to go an 82 game season without taking a couple of games off here and there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think the Sixers are in a bad spot. They are 2-8, which they are now 14th in the conference. Only the lowly Raptors have a worse record. Um,
Yeah.
but
And you can't
like I
picture
don't know
them
what you do.
going 8-2, right, in their next 10, right? So
No,
they start off these first 10, 2-8, or could they reverse that? Not the way this team is constructed at this moment, right?
no,
Yeah.
and like that's where it can kind of get late a little bit early. So let's say they end up like 4-13.
Right.
That's where it looks like, oh gosh, like how can I get out of this?
Right.
Um,
Right.
well, they play the Cavs tonight. I did see though that Embiid is not playing, but then
So
they
he's
go
not playing tonight. Okay.
Orlando. What's that?
So he's not playing tonight. He didn't play much last night. You know,
Yeah.
it's I I mean, I don't listen. Kawhi Leonard is kind of falls in this bucket as well. So does Paul George. There are just, I don't know. We see it in baseball. We see it sometimes in football too. But it seems like in the NBA, there's just more of guys that just have this propensity to get hurt a lot and never recover. We saw it with Derrick Rose. He just never seemed to recover from that first injury, that he had. And
Zion.
Yeah, we'll get to Zion. He's another one. Um, and I don't know what to say about that. It doesn't look like Embiid is not hustling. It looks like he was trying to play hard. Karl Anthony Towns fully outplayed him last night, but Towns is healthy. He's younger. He's faster. He's probably as strong as Embiid. But Embiid is overall, when he's healthy, he's probably the better player. I would say that that's the fact. But I mean, if you're Nick Nurse, that's a tough, tough spot, man. I mean, I don't know what you do with that team.
Yeah, and it's not like Nick Nurse is a good coach. He's not going to
Yes.
be the one on
Yeah.
the chopping block
No,
yet.
no,
Um,
no.
but yeah, I don't know because also they're not really that deep
Mm-mm.
besides their top three,
No,
and
no.
there's not like a guy I'm like, oh, okay, like I kind of trust that this guy will kind of step it up or anything like that. So
No, and they lost Tobias. I don't remember if they traded him or if he signed with Detroit. Cam Payne. I have a tough time saying his name. This sounds like campaign. Cam Payne is on the Knicks now. So they you're right. They lost some of their depth. They have a pretty good young player, the guy that was hitting threes last night. But and listen, I don't feel sorry for them at all. I mean, they're one of our rivals, but it's just an odd thing to watch. And Embiid has, I mean, he just signed. He just tacked on 3 years, 193 million. So the Sixers are fully available. There's no way they're trading him because who's going to really take him? Especially since he's announced I'm never playing back to backs again, and it's not like there's not going to be back to backs. Let's jump over and a couple of other guys, right? That are out. Kevin Durant. I don't know if Kevin Durant falls in that category, but he's had some injuries and he's out right now. Chet Holmgren, who also I think he miss his first full year. He
yeah,
he's going to be out for a while. Now he had broken pelvis when he went diving for a loose ball.
yeah.
Looks
Did you
like
see that?
looks like a nasty injury that might keep him out for quite some time. And OKC, you feel bad. They've started off 9-2. But let's get to Zion and then we'll jump into this cup. He is also now out for a while. Uh, and I don't know what the numbers are. You might have said them, or someone said how little games he's played that he's been available in, right? For his whole career. What do you if you're the Pelicans, so and I texted you this, the Pelicans with him healthy like last year and now here another year, they could be a pretty dangerous team in the West. I'm not saying that they would go to the finals, but they're a team that I could see knocking off a few of these teams in the West. Not without Zion, though, because Brandon Ingram is very good. They've got some really good players on that team, and they're well coached, but they need Zion. I mean, they've built everything around him. What's your take on him?
I was one that texted it. In 6 seasons, he played a total of 190 games,
My
which means
God,
he's averaging about 31 games a season.
that's
Um,
awful. And they re-signed him too. Like, was it last year or the year before?
yeah.
I mean, that's awful.
Um, and like part of it is like kind of weird because like I think part of his injury issues was he wasn't in shape.
Right.
He wasn't like putting the
This might
work
be a
in.
little different. You're right. Yes.
But yeah, I do think this is a little different. Also, it's so weird. Because this is I'll just read this off to you because I remember I'd known about this, but every 6 years, the number one overall pick is a bust. Since the turn of the century, Kwame Brown was drafted in 2001. Obviously, he's a bust. Ask Stephen A. Smith about that. Um, Greg Oden in 2007, 6 years later. Anthony Bennett in 2013, 6 years later, and then Zion in 2019. So that means whoever is the number one overall pick, this is the year that you don't want it because the guy is probably going to be a bust. But
Wow.
I don't know. It's just so weird. And if you're looking at the Pelicans, you're once again you're kind of stuck. Um, like it also makes me think, man, all of these teams that signed all these big guys to insane extensions, like um, no one's taken Zion at this point, and also you don't really have a great option to move someone else in there. Like it's just you're kind of in a stuck place, and I don't know what the deal is with Zion. Maybe he's a guy also that can't do the back to backs. He needs some of that load management. But also, the NBA is trying to curtail it. And I don't know if it's working. Like, are we actually seeing less injuries with all of these guys resting? Because I don't really think so.
No, I mean Jimmy Butler's out as well. So is Kevin Durant, as I said. I don't know. I was trying to rack my brains in preparation for the show to think of an example of where load management actually worked in somebody's favor in the playoffs.
The only one I can think of is Kawhi when he won the finals with the Raptors. That's it.
Yeah, I couldn't. And so he probably missed some time then, and I know they were very careful. Now that was his one and only year with Toronto, right? So I think
Yeah.
he put some stipulations in, and it probably worked out. Yeah, it did work out. Obviously, they won the championship. And yeah, I can't think of where it's worked for. It certainly hasn't worked for Embiid. They haven't gotten past the second round ever with him, and
Yeah.
it hasn't worked for Zion. They haven't gotten past the first round, I don't think, with him ever. And so I don't know that it even works. I mean, I would think that staying in shape and staying in a rhythm. Now, I'm not saying the NBA is not a grind. It's a long season. It seemed like it started earlier this year for some reason in October, and it's not going to end if you go to the finals. I mean, you're playing until mid to late June. So that's a really long season, but you don't play more than 4 games a week either. Now, again, I want to be sensitive because there is travel, there's all of that practice and everything, but I just think that how do we look at someone like LeBron James all these years? I don't remember him having probably his first year with the Lakers. He had a relatively serious injury. I don't remember him having a real serious injury and being out for extended periods of time. At 40 years old, he's not even asking for a minutes limit. I mean, he hated that last year when they tried to put that on him. Um, I mean, I have to think that some of that is conditioning, right, Ken?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
And I think it's um like because I mean we see it in baseball too. Uh and now I know Tommy John surgery is bigger now than it was 30 years ago. But like you look at the pitch count in some of these playoff games, like Pedro in the infamous game 7. I think he threw like 130 pitches.
yeah,
But like and also Pedro never really had like a significant arm injury.
yeah.
Um, Now I think part of it is maybe in the other things like the practices and everything like that and the workouts. Maybe some of these guys are going a little bit too hard,
Yeah,
so they don't have enough for the actual game.
yeah,
Which to me, like if that's the case, like reverse that energy.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, like, and I think it's still going to be. There's a few things the NBA has like looming issues. I think the load management is still like one of those things that's kind of looming there. You know who doesn't care about load management is the Knicks. Those
No,
guys are playing 45 minutes a night.
they never have. And and Thibodeau said this. He's well aware that their starters are playing a lot of minutes early because, and they've got reinforcements coming back. Payne came back last night. Achua should be back in another week or so. They'll probably pick up somebody, maybe a Marcus Morris or somebody like that to help off the bench. But he said the advantage is that this starting five, and I told you this a few days ago, this starting five is playing extremely well together. And they didn't get tired down the stretch last night because the Sixers were making another run at them. And so that's going to be the advantage, I think, for the Knicks as long as they stay healthy. I mean, Brunson was a little scare at the beginning of the second half last night, but he came right back. It turned his ankle, looked like a little bit, and he finished strong down the stretch. So you're 100% right there. Now you sent a great article, and I want to I want to get into that because the NBA Cup could kind of wait. It's still early. The Knicks won, the Warriors won. I believe Detroit beat Miami. There were a few, surprise games last night, but I think it's more important that we stay on this road. Then we'll get to the NBA. A part of that article also talked about the amount of three-pointers that the NBA could possibly look at MLB as an example of kind of fixing itself because the ratings are way down for this early part of the season, and Shaquille O'Neal really is thinking it's because of the amount of three-pointers that fans don't seem to be excited about. And I think I mentioned to you the Knicks lost that game to the Hawks, but to me, what made that game exciting was Trae Young wasn't settling for threes. He was driving in the lane, he was dishing it back out, and so were the Knicks. They weren't settling for threes that night as well. And the Philly game, there was spurts of the same thing with the Knicks and Philly last night. Although I think Paul George, I wrote it down here, had 7 threes that he made last night, but I think he only missed one or two, so he didn't take a ton. So, what was your thoughts on that article? And should the NBA be a little bit worried?
I think that they should be a little bit worried because, like, what you can end up getting into is that basketball becomes too boring, where you just have everyone standing around in the or standing out in the perimeter, including your big man, just hoisting up a billion threes. And like analytics wise, it makes sense. And I think also this is a lot of the Steph Curry effect, not like blaming him for the demise of basketball, but um, when you have a guy that is literally the best 3-point shooter of all time, paired up with another guy who's a very, very good 3-point shooter in Klay Thompson, and they won multiple titles, everyone's like, well, if we just work on our 3-point shooting, we'll be fine.
Right.
But I think now it's kind of created that culture where everyone just wants to hoist up threes. And I liked what it said because it's not so much that it doesn't make sense, but it's just really awful to watch. Um,
Yeah.
Now, if everyone's sinking the threes, it's fun and it's exciting. We'll get to the Cavs in a second, where I was at the game on Friday. It's exciting when they're shooting 75% of threes and they're getting the open guy and everything.
Yeah.
But like shooting 75% over the first half of a game is kind of on the rare side. Um, but also I don't know how the NBA fixes it. Because between load management and like the excessive threes, it's just not gonna like I don't want to see my third string point guard hoisting up 6 threes a night and missing 4 of them. Like
Yeah.
it just isn't it's not a good product.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like it took baseball a while, but baseball really got their product up a level. And they did that really with the pitch clock, which at first both of us were like, I don't know. But like you don't really notice it. There's maybe 1 or 2 pitch clock violations in a series. Um, and then also like the 10th inning, like we don't have 15 inning marathons anymore,
Yeah.
which sometimes that's fun because you always love to get like your position player playing in the 14th inning, but it helps create a little bit more excitement in the game. I don't know how the NBA fixes it because if you make it a like you can't change what a 2 and a 3 are. Like it'll throw off all the records.
Yeah.
It'll change like the points and everything like that.
Yeah.
Uh I don't know if you can institute a limit on how many threes you can get. I don't know if that's a thing. But let's say like you're allowed 10 threes, 10 shots can be worth 3 point. And then after that, even if you take a three, it's still worth two. But also, like, I don't know if that's gonna incentivize it or not.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but also like they're signing these major TV deals, the whole TNT Amazon fiasco, like that's a
That's been
lot of
really
money that you're
quiet,
putting in.
right? That's been really
That
quiet. Like you haven't heard any of the TNT guys say this is our last year or anything like that because they definitely appealed. That's a whole other story we can get into though. But um, I love where you're going with this. I don't know that there's a solution either, except that I don't know. It would. I mean, the Celtics, did they lead the league in 3-point shooting last year, rather? I mean, I'm just trying to think of winning teams. See, Shaq, you hit it on the head because Shaq said it really changed when the Warriors started doing this and they won, with Curry and with Thompson, and they won championships. And so other teams that now have tried to emulate them. But I just think that there's something to be said about a traditional three-point play, right? You go for a layup, you get fouled. There's something to be said about the mid-range game. There's something to be said about playing great defense, especially inside. Let's just face it, it's hard to defend a three-pointer. Okay, what did you find?
Well, the top two teams in 3 points attempted last year. The Celtics 42 and a half, the Mavericks 39 and a half.
Two teams in the finals.
Two teams in the finals.
So then teams are going to continue to emulate that, if those two teams had that much success, right? And so anyway, let's get before we jump to the NFL, talk a couple of minutes about the 12-0 Cavs. I know you went, and who did they play that night when you went?
They played Golden State.
And Golden State got spanked. What was the score at halftime? You sent me the score. I don't remember.
They were up by 40. It was 41 or 82 to 41 at the half.
They were up by
It was
41 points at the half.
it was the largest like in franchise history of a lead at halftime.
Wow.
Um, they
Wow.
were up, it was 20 to 2 to start the game.
Oh man. Wow.
Like I've never been to a game that was basically over in the first 5 minutes like that one. Um, but like it was also so exciting because they were shooting 75% from three. So
Yeah.
Donovan Mitchell is pulling up for a three, boom. Um, Darius Garland is pulling up for a three, boom.
Yeah.
Like they were moving the ball around. They were playing great defense, and also like Steph didn't really get. He never really got into a groove. He made a couple shots because he's Steph Curry,
Right.
but he never really got like great shots off. And then Draymond Green also he had 4 fouls in the first half.
Yeah.
Um, so he was definitely out of it. But man, this Cavs team, it's looking like it's something special.
And so is there excitement building there?
Yeah, there's excitement now, especially now that they're 12-0 and new coach. It's now like every single win adds to their record of best record to start with a new head coach
Wow.
was 9-0. And also now they have the Hawks, the Heat, the Pistons, the Rockets, and
Oh,
76ers. No,
yeah.
that's not right. Why is it? No, I have that wrong. The Sixers, the Bulls, the Hornets, and then the Celtics. So, like, could we be talking about the 15-0 Cavs going up against the Celtics?
That'll be good. That'll be fun.
Possibly.
Yeah, that'll be fun to watch. I was totally wrong so far on the Cavs because I said I didn't think the Cavs were, I thought they would still be good, but they didn't make hardly any moves in the offseason. But the one big move I forgot was getting Kenny Atkinson. And you have to remind me, their assistant coach was supposed to be the heir apparent to Tom Thibodeau. And very quietly, he left the Knicks and he's their right-hand man there. He's a young guy. Um, you'll probably recognize the names if you read off the assistant coaches. I always forget, but he always, you could tell, was always talking to the players, sitting right next to Thibodeau, and people had said that he would be the next Knicks coach more than likely whenever, Thibodeau steps aside. And and I saw when they played the Knicks, I'm like, wait a minute, he's on the Cavs now.
Johnny Bryant.
Johnny Bryant. There you go. Yeah. Young guy. And I forgot where he was at even before the Knicks. I think he was in college coach before the Knicks, but he's very well regarded throughout the NBA. And I saw that he's there. But Kenny Atkinson, I've always liked. I thought that was the start of the demise of the Nets when they went after the big names, whether it was, Jason Kidd or Steve Nash. Jason Kidd has turned out to be a very good coach, but I don't think coaching was Nash's thing. But Kenny Atkinson brought that team so far, was such a good coach for them. And I thought that I was like, why did they fire him? And he's been with Golden State these last several years now, and he waited his turn. He could have gotten a Sacramento job, but he said, I'll stay, and Mike Brown took that. Um, so it's good to see. It's good to see some excitement, and it's good. We'll have to talk about the Cavs. You're our eyes on the ground there with the Cavs now. The Warriors, even with that loss, are 9-2 still. So the Warriors off to a great start. The Suns are also 9-2. So is OKC. Those are the teams that are off to great starts. I'm worried OKC without Holmgren, though, they might come back to earth a little bit. And Hartenstein is still going to be out for another couple of weeks, I hear. And Durant out with the Suns. Durant's not a very quick healer, throughout his career. So he might be out for a while. Hey, you ready to talk some football?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's get into some NFL. Kenny, I'm going to start just with the Jets. I'm only going to spend a couple of minutes, and I'm going to turn it right to you to go through your chart because you made some very, very, very interesting changes on here from last week. I don't know. I don't even know what to say about the Jets because, first of all, I didn't get home. We had church assignments and stuff like that. I didn't get home until about 6:30. And when I turned it on, I texted you. I was like, wait a minute, it's 31-6? And it was in like midway through the third quarter. And it almost looks like the Jets are like playing in a fog. Like, they're just going through the motions. And don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying they're not playing hard or they're not trying, but I mean, it looks like almost sometimes they're playing in slow motion. That the Cardinals just looked faster than them. I mean, in every single aspect. Rodgers couldn't step up in the pocket, and he can't really scramble anymore. He was under pressure almost every single time. And I mean, they only scored 6 points, and I know they blew a couple of things in the first half I didn't see, but I saw the highlights where they got down in the red zone and had an interception or a fumble. I just it's hard to watch, and especially after having off. I mean, they played Thursday night, which gave some hope, right? They beat Houston, so they had 10 days off, and they just didn't look. They looked like they were just meandering. Again, there's a difference. Not playing. They weren't. It wasn't like they weren't playing hard. They just look confused, and I just don't know what to make of a team with this much talent being 3-7 at this point in the season. And they played the Colts this week. I mean, nobody has confidence that they're going to just easily beat the Colts, even though it's at home. I don't know, Ken, what's your take? It's just it's like wait till next year and then the questions start to arise. You're gonna need a new coach because Albrecht seems like a really nice guy, and he's probably a very good defensive coordinator. He doesn't seem like he's ready to be a head coach to me. And then Rodgers, what do you do with him if he says, "Hey, I want to come back for another year"? Now he's signed for another year. I mean, the Jets are in a very tricky spot. Do you start over now with a new quarterback? You start to peel off some of these high-priced veterans they have. I don't know, man. But what about the rest of this year? What are your thoughts?
I think it's safe to say, I mean, we talked about it last week. The Jets season at this point is over.
Yeah,
Um, I'll just pull up I had their schedule up. Most of these games could like if you're talking without any context and you're like starting anew, they got the Colts, the Seahawks, Dolphins, Jags, Rams, Bills, Dolphins.
seems like some
Like,
winnable games, right? But
yeah,
it's the Jets, though.
right. And like out of those games, I would say the only one that's definitely out of reach would be the Bills. But also the Bills at week 17 probably will have zero to play for
Yeah,
because the AFC East has been that tremendously awful.
they're 8-2 right now. Yeah, yeah,
Like they have a 4.5 game lead
yeah,
for second place. Like they're not gonna have anything to play for. But
yeah.
anyway, like I think the Jets are done because I can't see this team winning out the rest of their season and going 10-7 or
No,
losing one game and going 9-8.
No, and I'm the
Um,
most optimistic fan that you can find. I don't see that path. I'd be stunned, but you know,
because and also like they're not that like they're 2 games out of the playoffs.
right.
But yeah, I just don't see it. I think the biggest question though is kind of what do you do? Um, because like hopefully Aaron Rodgers just says, "All right, I tried my best, that's it," and retires. Because then at least you have some flexibility. But he's the one that created this mess between bringing in all of his guys, between not playing well at all. Like, okay, obviously you can't hold the Achilles injury against him, but he has not played well at all this year. Um, like almost as bad as Daniel Jones, and that's
Well,
saying a lot.
well, yeah. I mean, I don't know where they go. Um, I just don't. It's funny because I don't think I'm alone, and you and I certainly, at least I'll say for myself. I mean, you're awesome at what you do here, but I know I'm not on a level of a Stephen A. Smith and Jeff Saturday and some of the guys that you hear talking, and even them, they're at a loss for words. They can't really explain why the Jets are 3-7. So I can't either. And again, I didn't obviously I only watched the last quarter and a half, but towards the end, when they were driving and then they got stopped on fourth down, I even turned and I never do that. I'm like, oh come on, this is it. 31-6 is 3 minutes left. You can't get a first down here. I mean, it's like I don't know what to say. The Giants, the Cowboys, I think you can lump in. I don't know that the Giants are as disappointing now. Who was it, your guy on the Giants that admitted that he didn't play hard on one play? Is that Banks is your player? Is that Devontae Banks that
I don't know.
that said he didn't play hard? He admitted that they caught it on video that he didn't play hard on one play. That would signal coaching, I think, and discipline. But I think that,
Deontay Banks, yeah.
yeah. Um, Are you seeing what they're talking about there? That he didn't play hard. He actually admitted it. That there was one he said, well, I shouldn't be judged on just the one play and kind of lost my train of thought, concentration. I could get that, but football is really a hustle type game. I don't know what to make of Dallas. I mean, they're now without Dak Prescott. I mean, they finally played Trey Lance, and I guess they could see what he has the rest of the year. But they're far out of it. I don't see them making any noise. They also didn't make the changes they should have made in the off season. But let's talk now. Let's go to your list, and this is very very interesting, especially the top. But obviously, you're going to start at the bottom, so I'll keep quiet. Go ahead, do your thing.
Well, started from the bottom. Here we go. So our bottom list this week is the tank watch. At this point, these 7 teams are kind of at a are you going to win another game? Honestly, if you're a fan, you probably don't want to win another game. Um, Also, well, actually, I want to add another quick note. The Jets uh, are right now in the 8th spot in the draft. It's always bad when you know draft order as well as I do. Means your team is bad. But I want to read the teams ahead of them.
Yeah,
Carolina, they might get a quarterback. I don't know what you do with Bryce Young. I'll get more on them in a sec. The Patriots, they're not getting a quarterback.
Patriots have won their last two, and Carolina's won their last two.
Um, the Raiders probably would get a quarterback because
Right.
they don't really have a good guy there. Um, the Titans are probably also getting a quarterback. The Browns, I don't know. They're in a weird spot.
They're not drafting a quarterback.
Um,
I don't think, but we'll
and
see.
then the Giants, I think the Giants draft a quarterback.
Oh
And
yeah,
the Jags aren't drafting a quarterback. So
no.
like and this is right now, there's obviously going to be movement between now and then, but like you're talking about 3 or 4 teams ahead of you. So you could trade up and things like that. But anyway, um, tank watch. These teams are like if you're a fan of them, you probably don't want them to win another game. Shout out to Carolina, even though they've won 2 in a row.
Yeah.
Um, Bryce Young has actually given them some hope,
Yeah.
and I do wonder what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Uh, because you could say, we'll run this back with Bryce Young. We end up with a top 5 pick, trade down in the draft, and say like trade down with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
I don't think the Cowboys would draft a quarterback, but draft like trade down and then get a bunch of assets to try to help give you a lot of weapons with Bryce Young. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting. The Patriots, I don't know why they didn't start Drake May at the beginning of the year. But we'll see kind of how they go.
Yep.
But also they're not looking for a quarterback. But it kind of in the same vein, like they could get in a good draft spot and then trade down and get more assets, get a lot of weapons around Drake May. The Raiders seem like they're not a full-blown dumpster fire, but they just kind of seem weird. And I don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
The Browns had probably their best week of the season because they had a bye week. I was joking everyone, yeah, the Browns aren't going to lose this week, and sure enough, they didn't. The Titans, I think the Titans need to hit the full reset button. I think they've kind of already done that. Derrick Henry's gone, Hopkins is gone, so the Jags still are to me one of the most puzzling bad teams in recent memory.
Yeah.
Like I think most people had Houston winning that division. I don't think anyone had the Jacksonville Jaguars being 2-8.
No.
And also their next game is against Detroit, so good luck.
Oof.
And then the Giants. I think one of the biggest things now with the Giants is because with the Jets, you're kind of stuck with Aaron Rodgers. Hopefully he retires, or I don't know why anyone in their right mind would want to trade for Aaron Rodgers, but with the Giants now, the biggest question for them is, do you make the switch now? You're at the bye week. Daniel Jones has played bad, and Brian Daboll has kind of changed his tone, where he used to say, "Oh, he's our starting quarterback." Now he's like, "Well, let's reevaluate."
Yeah.
Something that he's not going to care about, but the front office will. Daniel Jones still gets paid like $22 million if he gets hurt this year.
Wow.
So better to bench him than to play him in a meaningless game where they get hurt. And then they're kind of stuck. So I have a feeling that we've probably seen the last of Daniel Jones as a starter. Adam Schefter also said as much too. So it looks like we might be at the end of the Daniel Jones era, and hopefully, I'm hoping Drew Lock is just as terrible. I don't want to win another game this year. The only game that I'm worried about is ironically on Thanksgiving. But we'll get to that in a sec.
Okay.
The next tier is, how did we get here? These 7 teams, I think most of them had kind of high expectations, either going into the year or at one part of the year. And like, you blink here, it's week 11, and you're like, why are we in such a horrible spot? The Bengals, Joe Burrow has played really, really well this year, but yet they're still
4-6.
4-6. Yeah. They're still trying to figure out their way. And I know they had it was a great Thursday night, which the Thursday nights have always been a little blah. The last few have been pretty good. Yes. And this week it's the Commanders and Eagles, so who knows?
Yeah.
The Dolphins, how do we get here? A lot of that questions can be answered with Tua, but they still have a lot of other weapons, and I don't know. They kind of seem like a weird team. The Bears, the Bears since that Hail Mary, have not scored a touchdown.
They haven't scored a touchdown. I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, it's been 3 weeks now. And they fired their offensive coordinator.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, it's not looking good for Caleb Williams. I think it's easy to say now Jaden Daniels is probably going to win Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Oh, yeah.
But it's weird, and also that division is so tough, it's going to be really hard to overcome it. The Cowboys, we harped on them a little bit. I don't know how they got to this point. Obviously, Dak shows his value as a quarterback because their offense looked gone this past week. but also they're kind of in a weird stuckish spot. Dak Prescott is the highest paid player in the NFL, and you have him for several years. You can't just move off of him. Um, and they could have just let this season ride out and signed him as a free agent, but they decided not to.
Right.
Mike McCarthy clearly doesn't have a hold of that locker room after the Micah Parsons
Oh,
comments.
that was
So
brutal.
he's already seen, yeah, he's like a lame duck. My biggest issue, though, is the Cowboys and Giants play on Thanksgiving.
Oh, wow.
Right now, one game separates them. I want the Cowboys to run all over them.
Wow.
But I don't know. The lights at Jerry World might get into CeeDee Lamb's eyes. So I don't know if they're actually going to do it. So we'll see.
Oh boy,
Um,
that's the late game of Giants
yeah.
at Dallas. Ooh. Okay.
So we'll see. Next, the Colts. The Colts' biggest answer to how did we get here is they don't know what to do with their quarterback.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson, I think, has a lot of skills, but he's still raw and needs to be refined. The only way he's going to do that is if he plays. Now, I understand they might have wanted to punish him because of the whole being tired thing, but still, you gotta do different. You gotta just stick with him, even if you have an awful year. You just gotta go with it and kind of see what you have after maybe next year at this point.
I agree.
The
They named
Saints
him the
hadn't,
starter for this week.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it should be starter moving forward. We don't
Yeah.
care. We don't care the results. We want to see growth from Anthony Richardson.
Agree.
The Saints, I think more how did we get here is the fact that they started out 2-0 and then didn't win a game until they fired their coach.
Yeah.
Which to me is still and then next to the Jets, we talked about the Jets a lot, so
Yeah.
I'm not gonna harp on them, but I know not everyone had the Jets going to the playoffs, but I definitely wouldn't have had the Jets being 3-7.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I had them at least in the playoffs.
Let's see here. Next row is the mid type of year. I don't know. These 5 teams have kind of just been, well, mid. They haven't been that great. The 49ers also have a weird looming issue with Deebo Samuel, right? Wasn't he the one that like pushed the long snapper?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
I think
know.
Shanahan said that it's all squash, but that looked nasty. I mean, he had his hand around his throat for a second. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, that wasn't that shouldn't have happened.
And like they're overall screaming, we're in a Super Bowl hangover. So
Oh, and McCaffrey's back, so that's why I wouldn't count them out yet. But I agree. So far, they've been just mid.
The Seahawks too, they started out pretty good, but they've kind of come to middle of the pack.
Hmm.
The Bucks too, the Bucks, a lot of that is injuries.
Hmm.
The Broncos are literally 5-5. It's the definition of a mid type of year.
Yeah,
They did put a huge scare into Kansas City.
yeah.
But
Amazing
I
what they
mean,
did.
we'll get to
Yeah,
them later, but
yeah,
we'll see there. And then the Rams. I think the Rams also could be a team. They're getting healthy. They have a great coach. That division is kind of like no one really wants to win it.
yeah.
So there's a chance that they could pop up. So we'll see there. Next, I'd feel good if the season ended today. These 7 teams, I feel like they have had a good season. They'll probably make the playoffs. If not, they'll be like right outside of it. But I think overall, you would say it's a good year. The Steelers, do you know that Russell Wilson has as many touchdowns as Kenny Pickett had all last year? And he's only played 3 games?
Oh gosh, how about that
Oh,
pass game-winning throw to Mike Williams, who a few weeks ago was persona non grata here in New York. Oh, not to us, but to Aaron Rodgers.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, the Jets could use a wide receiver like that. I don't know.
oh, yeah,
Um, the Texans are kind of their expectations were higher, but especially after losing Nico Collins for a minute, losing the other dude for the year. Um,
yeah.
like their expectations are kind of lower, but I think you'd still feel pretty good. Like make the playoffs, win the division,
Some growing
despite
pains,
injuries
I
around
think,
us.
right? Growing pains with Houston, I think.
Yeah.
You know,
And like, and a lot of times, especially with younger quarterbacks, growth is never linear. There's
right?
always like the setbacks and the push forward. So,
Yeah,
um, The Vikings are still 7-2 somehow. Um, they scored 12 points and won. I think that's one of those teams to watch out for in the playoffs because the defense is so good. Um, Brian Flores is a great defensive minded guy. I
Yeah.
know I know he didn't leave Miami on the best of terms, but he is still really good with the X's and O's, it
That
seems like.
lawsuit is still pending, you know.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, yeah, it's
I didn't
still
know
out
that.
there. That's really maybe we'll get into that a little bit more next week because I read a couple of articles about that this week. But go ahead.
Um Next the Falcons. I don't know. The Falcons have kind of just
Yeah,
been there.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Also the Chargers, they've kind of just been there. They've done their work.
6-3.
They're a good team.
Chargers. Yeah, yeah.
Um and then the Packers, I think once again, their expectations were probably slightly higher,
Hmm.
but losing your quarterback for several weeks
Yeah,
can kind of temper that. But I think they'd feel good. Like right now, they're 6-3. They'd be
yeah,
in the playoffs. I
yeah,
think they'll be fine with it.
yeah.
And then the Cardinals. I mean,
Uh,
you got to give some credit there. I know the Jets didn't play well, but Kyler Murray's had a pretty good year.
how about Marvin Harrison Jr., man? Wow, he's been amazing. Yeah, I mean, you give this guy a weapon like that, he's taking full advantage of it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Hmm.
Um, and now these 6 teams, these are the tiebreaker watch teams. These are teams like I say tiebreaker watches and like they know they're going to be in the playoffs, but now they're looking at different matchups to see who they would play in the playoffs. Um, so first is the Chiefs. The Chiefs are 9-0. The Chiefs
Amazing.
can't seem to lose games.
Yeah,
Um, and also Patrick Mahomes still hasn't really played that well. But like now, unless Lamar Jackson continues on the trajectory he is, I can definitely see if they're like 16-0, 17-0. There's going to be a lot of talk about Patrick Mahomes for MVP this year.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but also he still hasn't played great, but they're
yeah.
still winning games. Um, the Lions though, they keep winning games too. Uh, I've got more on the Lions as part of my inspiration later, but like I don't think there's a team that is considered more of a juggernaut right now than Detroit. Like where
Yeah.
it's the team that you don't want to face.
You throw
Um,
Jared Goff's name in the MVP mix.
yeah, I mean, he had a brutal Sunday night, but
Yeah.
other than that, he has been excellent this year.
Yeah. Up to that point, he had thrown the least interceptions, right? In the league for the starting quarterbacks. But I think he threw what, 4 or 5 on Sunday night. They still won. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think he like doubled his interception total or something like that.
Yeah.
Next is the Bills. The Bills have been good. Obviously, uh, this week is big for them because like you're going for the number one overall seed, kind
Yeah.
of. Because if they lose, the Chiefs would be 10-0. They'd be 6-3. No,
Yeah.
not 6-3, 8-3. Um, so like you already have your 3 losses behind, and you don't have the tiebreaker. So once again, tiebreaker watch. So, but then after that, what else are you playing for? Like you're gonna win the division. So they could also be in a kind of a weird spot where they don't really have anything to play for, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have the Eagles up there. I don't know. The Eagles have been good.
They're
Um,
winning. Yeah.
they just keep winning. They're like it's surprising to me. That's one of those teams where you look and you're like, oh, they're 7-2. Wait, they're 7-2. But I mean, they're doing their work, so good for them. The Ravens, I think right now Lamar Jackson is the MVP. Like if you were to say the season ends today, he's probably the MVP. Um, Offensive Player of the Year is probably Derrick Henry, which
Yeah.
I think someone called that earlier this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
But um, but I think that they've really kind of proven themselves there. And last is the Commanders. Right now the Commanders are looking at like continuing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Obviously, big game tomorrow with the Eagles, but um, I think the biggest thing that you have to worry about there is Jaden Daniels getting hurt. You have to worry
Yeah.
if that's gonna affect them long term.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you did a great job on this again. I think when I first glanced at it, I was surprised because it was just the Chiefs on the top tier last week, and they're joined, I think rightly so, by several teams now. Um, it's been a long time, probably 25 or so years that there's been this type of excitement in Washington about their football team. And I got to tell you, man, Dan Quinn and them drafting Jane Daniels and making a couple other key veteran pickups, but they let those young players gel there. And they're just a really, really interesting, fun team to watch, you know? Um,
Um, one other thing with that,
yeah.
the Giants would have been in that spot if it weren't for Tommy DeVito. People, I saw people posting like, "Oh man, Tommy DeVito cost us Jaden Daniels, who who the Giants GM. His son was like, oh, I think he's the best guy
Uh, is
in that
DeVito going to
class.
get
So,
an opportunity to play here this year?
he might.
Right. Yeah. All right. All right. Very quickly now, what are you watching on Sunday? We have got and Thursday night. You mentioned that a good game Thursday night. Washington at Philly. That should be very good. I'm sure when they did that at the beginning of the year, they didn't think it would be as good and as big a game as it is. And then on Sunday, I only put because they're the teams that we do watch. Indy at the Jets. Um, the Browns at New Orleans should be very interesting. And because I think the Browns is still playing hard and they'll continue to play hard. Jameis Winston going back to New Orleans, right? And I know he wasn't there long. He's only there, I think, a year. But that should be an interesting matchup with their new coach. Seem to they have a little bit of a spark there. Baltimore at Pittsburgh in that 1 o'clock hour, I think, is always a hard-hitting, fun game. And then, I mean, everything stops at 4:25, and I'm going to try to get home in time because I have a church event at 1 o'clock, and that is Kansas City at Buffalo. What are you thinking?
I think that's one of the best games of the year, let alone this week. This week's a lot of weird matchups. But the takeoff is on. Like you said, Cleveland and New Orleans. Like who's getting a better draft pick there? Vegas and Miami. Well, Miami's still playing kind of hard.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, like uh, but Kansas City Buffalo is where it's at. Um, Josh Allen, I think, is trying to show that like he's beaten Patrick Mahomes in the regular season. I think it would mean a lot more to Bills fans if they're the first ones to hand the Chiefs an L this year.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
especially after they've lost in the ways that they have.
Even though I mean Baltimore is looming, it still feels to me like they're on a collision course, these two teams. Because Buffalo has the experience. They've quietly been doing their thing this year. And I almost feel like they're on a collision course for, the AFC Championship. Long way to go. And of course, the Ravens will have something to say about that, I think. But I'm looking forward to that, man, just because I don't care who wins, to be honest. But if the Chiefs win that, I'm like, are they going to run the table here? But again, it doesn't mean much if they, go 17-0, although that would be the first, right? They'd be the first to go 17-0. But you got to close it out, right? Because no one talks about the Patriots 16-0 because they lost in the Super Bowl to, I
Yeah.
don't know, this team, the Giants, I think, right? I mean, those were better days for you. Those were better. Those days will come back again. Those days will come
Yeah,
back
I hope
again.
so.
At least you've seen it.
Um,
I haven't.
well, that's true. Well, let me read you off the Chiefs' remaining schedule.
Yeah, go ahead.
At Carolina, home against the Raiders, home against the Chargers. That's a Sunday night. At the Browns, hosting the Texans, at Steelers, at Broncos.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but here's the thing. Uh, so they play the Browns. That's an easy game. Then they play the Texans. That's a 1 o'clock Sunday. And then they play Christmas Day at the Steelers. So they're
Oh,
playing 4 days later
yeah.
at Pittsburgh. And then they have like that extra little bit of time, and then they
Yeah.
finish off at the Broncos. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know that they'll run the table with that. That's a tough schedule. A little tougher than I thought. I knew that they were still playing the Steelers. They already played the Bengals, right? Because Bengals, I think they played like in second or third week of the
Yeah.
season. So I'm just thinking of the teams that match up well against them.
Oh, God.
What?
Yeah, that was the pass interference
Yes,
penalty.
right, right. That sort of turned Cincy's season kind of backwards a little bit because I think what was that in the third week? I think they were 0-3 after that,
Yeah, it was
and
the second week.
second week, okay. And I mean, they outplayed the Chiefs through most of that game, if I remember right. Listen to the last game, and then we'll go to inspiration. And I have a funny feeling we have the same inspiration. So if we do, I'll let you say it. Houston at Dallas Monday night.
The Battle of Texas.
Battle of Texas. Yes, yes. Um,
Um,
I, I think Houston will get back on track in that game. I don't have much faith at all that the Cowboys are going to do much damage the rest of this year, except beat your
yeah,
Giants on Thanksgiving Day.
please.
Um, so do you have Jake Bates as inspiration?
Nope.
Okay, so I'll say this real quick then. My inspiration is Jake Bates. He's the kicker for the Lions who hit. First of all, it was a phenomenal game. I did not get to watch because I was way, way, way too tired. But I did see the halftime score, and I was like, wow, Texans might beat the Lions here, you know? And then Texans didn't score the second half, and the Lions, scored all their points in the second half. And a 52-yard field goal by a guy named Jake Bates. And what two things that are inspirational about him is one, he last year he was a bricklayer. He wasn't even in the NFL last year. And that 52-yard kick, if you watched it, it just stayed straight, straight, straight towards the left field goal. It just barely made it in. I mean, he had enough distance, but it just barely made it. Didn't hit the crossbar there. But I'll just read this real quick. Speaking with NBC after his game-winning performance, Bates, who was a brick salesman as recently as last year, utilize his performance to elevate Jesus Christ and express optimism that others would follow him by learning about his story. If anything, I just hope people can see Jesus through my story, Bates said. That's what I'm here to do, is not to make or miss or be a good kicker or a bad kicker, but to spread the love of Jesus. Hopefully, I'm able to do that on the stage that I'm giving. And I'm happy to say NBC didn't stop that video, cut it, or didn't stop the interview or cut it. There's been some thought where all of a sudden there's technical difficulty when someone starts to talk about Jesus. Maybe that's happened on purpose, maybe not. But this one they let it play out, and I thought that was wonderful. I wasn't up to see it live, but I saw it the next day. So Jake Bates, Detroit Lions kicker, inspiration for this week.
Nice. That's a good one. I didn't know that. Uh, and I mean, good for him too. He's had a couple clutch ones, but
Yeah.
um, my Lions inspiration actually comes from one of the newest Lions, Darius Smith. So
Yeah,
came over from the Browns, and it's like a big trade. Obviously, like
he's a good player.
they needed
Yeah,
help and all.
yeah, he's
Oh
a really
yeah,
good player.
and it just so happens that he gets traded the week that the Browns are on their bye. So like every once in a while, you see like players that where that happens and they play 17 games. Um, but what the Lions did is they made sure that he was inactive for this this past week.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Okay.
because Zadarius Smith also lives in Florida and hasn't been able to assess the damage to his house. So the Lions gave him the week off in
Hmm.
order to go and take care of the stuff that he has at home and make sure if there's anything that he needs to do or take care of, and then help join the team and help them try and win a Super Bowl. So
Very
um,
cool.
there was like I'd read somewhere and they said like a lot of agents were really impressed with this because most teams wouldn't have done that. They
Right.
would have just been like, get over here and help us. So shout out to the Lions.
Yeah.
I think the culture that they're building there is really unique. And it's also like if they make it to the Super Bowl, I've said this with the Browns several times. They make it to the Super Bowl, Detroit's gonna go crazy for it.
Oh,
And we'll
yeah.
be happy for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And they could have used Smith right away, right? Because with Hutchinson out, they've continued to win without him. One of the best defensive players in the league, certainly. But that's awesome. And you're right. I think the whole culture, Dan Campbell, I think has changed that culture around. One of the guys, I'll mention this real quick, that I'm hoping the Jets look at strongly as a head coach is Aaron Glenn, who is the defensive coordinator for the Lions. And Aaron Glenn played most of his career as a very good defensive back with the New York Jets. And so,
Mm,
it would be, it's not like he's unfamiliar with New York. And I want to say 8, 9 years with the Jets. He was very good, Aaron Glenn. Solid, never a superstar, but very, very, very solid player for them for a long time. So we'll see. We'll see. Dan Campbell, backup tight end for your New York Giants. But I think that
yeah,
was 86. Was it the 86 championship team that he was on? I think it was the
yeah.
86. He was a backup tight end. Yeah. Yeah, Dan Campbell.
I
Um,
gotta say.
yeah. All right. Lots to get to next week. Hopefully the hot stove will not be lukewarm like it is right now. Hopefully it'll heat up a little bit and maybe we'll have some Juan Soto stuff to talk about, right?
I hope it's what is the contract that he signed with the Yankees, because that would make the offseason a lot better.
There you go. You can rest then, Other than that, you're going to be restless. All right.
Oh yeah.
Take us home, Kenny.
All right. This is Kenny Square 9
Kenny.
with Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next time.